people can be self-centered here, but I choose to see the positive. Like, are you hanging around people who make you feel good about yourself? People who speak like positivity into the air, with a sense of realism. Because if you're at the point where it's toxic positivity, I feel like you can cross over into delusion quite easily. But are you around people who keep you accountable? And like out here, you need people like that who will say, you're not doing, the best you can do. Like, you have so much more potential. You're waking up at 11 o'clock every day. You can wake up at 8. Literally, these people will make you feel like, okay, I don't feel bad about myself, but I know I can do more. The human brain is not meant to take on that much trauma,
right.
So, I mean, you can have seizures. People can start to hear voices. A lot of mental health issues can come from, repeated trauma to the brain. So,
right.
The game is evolving to the point where, they're throwing flags for people who lead with their head, head-to-head hits, will get you a fine. And a lot of players are donating their brain, to science and research after their careers are over with.
Oh, interesting. I like that.
Yeah, I've seen that. So that's a new thing that I'm starting to see. But it's difficult because, we enjoy, or at least like when I moved to this country in 1999, I enjoyed football because I'd never seen a sport where you would have these grown men running into each other.
Right.
And it was so violent. But something,
you just loved it?
Right, I just loved it. Something like Drew is like the most manly thing you can do. But for long-term health, I don't think it's particularly healthy.
Right.
And a lot of football players are walking away early.
Yeah.
You're having guys who are in their mid-20s, early 30s who are retiring from football.
Yeah.
Like, they'll get that second contract, guaranteed money, 20, 30 mil guaranteed. And after they play for a couple of years, they're gone because they want to enjoy life with their family and their kids. And they want to, they
actually
see,
function.
Right. They see how the older guys are struggling to walk on a day-to-day basis, and they want to enjoy their life.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting you say you came from another country, and like as soon as you watch football, it just like got your attention so much. I think like there is this part of our brain that like violence just somehow resonates. Like it used to be watching gladiators, and now it's like we watch football, and it's like
that's a great example.
It's something about us like for girls, like girls think it's sexy because it's a guy that can like protect you, right?
Right.
Like before, like whatever, we were like cave people. It was the dude that could like listen, like if you're sleeping at night and like the neighboring tribe just decides to attack you, and you have a violent guy and you have a chess player, dude.
Right.
Who are you gonna go hide behind? Right? The smart guy or the violent guy? Right?
Right. It's funny because, when you look a lot of dating preferences, sometimes guys like to blame women for, women say, I need a guy to be 6'2", blah, 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 all these requirements. But from an evolutionary perspective, you look at the guy to protect you, So this is how women were geared to think, from the beginning of time. So you think this way, and when you have a protector, it's going to protect not only you, but the family. So you want to at least feel protected. It doesn't mean that he has to be this big buff guy.
Yeah.
But she has to feel like, okay, he's in control of the situation.
Yeah. The only thing though is that you don't need that anymore. Like
you think so?
That was necessary to like evolve because food was rare and you didn't know your neighbors and you didn't know anything about what goes on in anyone's minds. And now it's like food is not rare anymore. It's everywhere. And like you have your shelter and like you're friends with your neighbors. Well, not in LA, but like, that they're not going to attack you in the middle of the night, hopefully.
Right. You would hope.
You would hope.
But still, I still think women prefer a man who will protect them, or at least like a man who has the situation in control. Like if something happens and you're panicking and he's panicking too, that's not seen as a desirable trait.
Right.
So to say.
I agree with you, but I think controlling the situation has shifted. Like before, if it used to be like a guy who could actually like just attack head on and like just solve the problem with violence, that would be taking control. As of now, I think that's not taking control. A guy who just gets in a fight because he's just like a violent dude or he thinks there are no other options, you can't walk away. To me,
Right.
that's just the guy who is just not that very evolved.
Right.
Like if like just that's my personal, like, guys that just get into fights,
Right.
that should be a thing of the past.
I mean, I wouldn't recommend that. It's more so being able to, diffuse a situation without violence being involved. In fact, you don't want violence nowadays.
Yeah, walk away. It's that easy.
You don't want violence nowadays because if you get into a situation, you don't know what people have, if they have a knife or a gun, like you want to walk away, so violence is actually a last resort.
Absolutely.
And guys have to recognize that. A lot of times, I was working in forensic psychiatry back in Virginia, and I had a lot of guys who would, do things because they felt threatened, or sometimes you feel like it's a manly thing to, go ahead and take this guy out, and things like that. But you have to understand you need to be geared towards longevity. Like, how long can you stay on this earth for your mom, for your dad, your siblings, your wife, your kids? So you can't take the, the most violent, route to solve the situation.
Yeah.
And
it's like I think so much of it is so social too, because you see it all the time. We're at parties or social gatherings. Guys bring up like their fight stories and how they single-handedly took so many guys out.
Right.
And like I am always like paying attention to people's like body language in response to like stories like that, and everyone's cheering the guy on.
Right.
The girls find it sexy, even though they're like, no, like you shouldn't. It's like, no,
you're right.
You like it.
Right.
And it's like, I've heard girls, like, when their boyfriend is talking about, like, getting in a fight, and she, like, you can tell, and, like, it's like, you get that response, and those, like, it reinforces the act when you keep getting, like, you're not getting punished. Like, if people would just, like, get real quiet and just tell you, dude, that's not cool.
Right.
If socially it wasn't a cool thing to do.
Right.
Right? Because there are peaceful societies where, like, fighting and violence is, like, not a thing at all.
Right.
There's if I remember correctly, there's a Batek culture in Malaysia, society, like tiny little like places in the world that violence and fighting is just not even a thing. Like, the normal thing to do in a fight is to walk away.
Right.
That's what people respect.
Right.
But like here, I feel like if you walk away, people are just gonna be like, pussy.
That's what they're gonna say. But you have to understand, a lot of times what women say and what they do is two different things. But like, just talking to you for a couple of minutes, I can tell that your mindset's evolved, so you think on a different level. But by and large, a majority of women, they're gonna think a certain way. So guys, a lot of everybody, we say that we do things because we want to, but a lot of what we do is geared towards attracting women. So guys often sometimes they'll pigeonhole themselves into this idea of what they think the woman wants, this aggressive guy over the top.
Yeah.
And it might not be in your best interest in terms of longevity, but that's what you think women want. But
yeah, to me, I don't know. Yeah,
that's a disconnect, because you might be one person. This is Pani in LA,
right?
But the majority
find it sexy
of women, so this idea of masculinity, it becomes difficult for guys to figure out what's masculine, what do I have to do, and it's causing a lot of stress for guys. And that's one thing that I want to talk about more in my content, because the majority of my audience on social media, like over 85% are women. So obviously I'm not gonna reach that many guys, but with male mental health, like every 4 out of 5 suicides are completed are by men. Men are suffering, and a lot of times it comes from issues not knowing what to do with their life, masculinity, dating, what women want, and there's a huge disconnect between what women say they want and what they actually do.
True. That's very true.
Yeah.
That is very true, because like when you think of like masculine traits, you think like aggressiveness, protecting, ambition, all those things. But then, and those are sexy things, don't get me wrong. Like, I love me a masculine man. But then what's sexier to me is intelligence and social intelligence, and being actually able to de-escalate a situation, because it's easy to get in a fight. It's like you're choosing your ego. But it actually, I think it takes so much more courage to walk away, because you're putting your ego to the side, and you're like, what? I could get in this fight, possibly beat you or get beaten, whatever. But I think it takes more courage to walk away. And that to me is sexier, because that's a guy who, in a heated situation, can pause in his mind
Right.
for a second and just like think for a second.
I agree.
And he can do that later with other things too. When we get in a fight, is he just gonna like pick his ego and
You're
like
right,
do
right.
that? Or is he gonna be able to pause? So I look at that and I'm like, no, this other thing is sexier to me than that.
Right.
That looks like animal behavior to me.
Right.
Kind of. It's just like everybody can do that.
And I don't know. I want to say you're in the minority or the majority with that thinking, but you definitely have an evolved, perspective on this topic.
Right.
You know.
So when I tell my boyfriend this, he doesn't believe me.
Mm-hmm. He doesn't believe you?
No, he does believe me, and like he doesn't get into that many fights, but I would have liked it if he didn't get in any at all. The problem is when guys are big, that gives them a more confidence of like, I can just demolish these other dudes.
Right.
And it's like, you absolutely can't, but it's not about what you can do.
Right. But normally a big guy wouldn't be tried as much from what I've seen.
Yeah.
Like a guy who's big would have nothing to prove.
Yeah.
Externally.
Yeah. He doesn't get tried, his friends get tried, and he just gets sucked into things.
Right.
Yeah. He's just like such a nice dude. Like he actually never gets in fights himself. It's always his friends that like get drunk and like they do something and they get in a fight and like he has to. And I'm like, no, you don't have to do shit. Just stand in the corner
you don't.
with your popcorn, wait for your friend to get out.
But well, it doesn't work that way with us as guys. Like if I have a good friend of mine, like I've had.
Yeah, I get it.
I've had situations, even, back at the house where, like, sometimes I remember one situation where they had to call me out of bed because we had somebody. It was this long, convoluted situation. So when my roommates called me and like, "Hey, Kojo, can you come and take care of this?" And then we handled the situation without having to get physical. Because my thing is, I don't want to end up on the news. I don't want to have to, be in protection mode where I have to start. Like if I'm fighting the situation, like we've lost control. Like you can't be doing that. Like when you have a lot to lose, you want to protect yourself and the people around you, and the whole situation. So I try and talk my way out of things. Say, hey, can you do this? Can you go here? Or this is not working out. Or hey, like maybe you came into the house. Maybe can you leave our house? Like let people know, because if you let things get to that level where you're agitated. A lot of times that's how you see crimes happen.
Right. Absolutely.
Somebody was so agitated because they couldn't, like if people could manage your emotions.
Oh yeah.
Just managing your emotions, you could change your life.
That's hard.
It's hard, but a lot of, therapy and treatment modalities are geared towards managing your emotions. Like if you can manage your emotion and how you feel in a certain situation, recognize that, I feel this way, but it's okay to feel this way, but not react. Mm-hmm. That's a superpower right there.
So what would you suggest for people to do? People who react so much, people who just get carried away by their emotions, and people who just have like really intense emotions. Right. It's like, how do you control that? So
one form of therapy that we have that I really enjoy is called dialectical behavioral therapy. And there's a concept within it called radical acceptance that I really like, that, we would teach it back to, the patients in the inpatient environment. And I use it personally, for myself. And you pretty much radically accept everything that's coming to you. So if something happens and is really awful, like you accept, okay, this happened. It's really, really that bad. Like if, let's say you're dating somebody for 5 years and you're engaged, right? And your family members know and all this stuff, and they break up with you out of nowhere, or they cheat on you, or they get pregnant on you, or if they, do something really foul.
Yeah.
You're going to feel very hurt. You're going to feel betrayed. You're going to be ashamed. But if you can realize, okay, this is as bad as, it looks, it's really bad, but I don't have to react to it. Like you're still, like regardless of what happens to you, you're still responsible for your reaction. So if you can realize, okay, this is really as bad as it appears to be, let me sit in my emotions and process things, but I'm not going to go out and, hurt this lady, or if it's right, if it's like, I'm not going to go hurt this guy and, slash his tires. Like I'm really upset and I'm going to process my emotions, but I'm not going to react. And likewise, if something is good, hey, this is really as good as it is. Like I'm going to enjoy this moment. We won the Super Bowl, or I just got married, or I got a promotion, or out here in Hollywood, I got a gig on a new show. Like if something is good, you're gonna enjoy that, and say, hey, I'm going to radically accept this. It's as good as it is. But normally you don't struggle with celebrating things. You struggle with the downside. And a lot of times when people go through a devastating, event, it could be something as, as big as like the loss of a family member, or somebody broke up with you, or maybe somebody cussed you out of work, right? And you feel upset. Like when that happens, if you cannot radically accept what's going on, you're going to be in denial. When you're in denial, then you can push back. Then you might react and say, hey, this happened to me, so I'm going to go out here, or one person cheated on me, so now I'm going to cheat on everybody for the rest of my life. I'm going to reply messages 3-4 days later. I'm going to be an asshole because this happened to me. So if you can internalize things and just realize, okay, it's almost the easiest way of saying it is what it is, without being too apathetic. Because sometimes if you get to a point where it's like, oh, it is what it is, then you don't care. But
Right.
if you can still care, but realize, oh, this happened to me, and it's really as bad as it is. If you can process your emotions and say, okay, this happened to me, or let's say this girl got pregnant on me, I can go to her boyfriend's house. I can pull up in the driveway. What am I gonna do? You pull up the house, you sit there. Okay, you're there. Am I gonna go inside? Am I gonna go confront her, him? Are you gonna hurt them? Are you gonna fight them? What are you gonna do? Like if you can talk yourself through a decision, you'll see how irrational you are in the moment, and then you can say, oh, okay, well, I could do this, or I could just go talk to some friends, or I could treat myself to some In-N-Out and watch Netflix movie or decompress. Like if you can talk yourself through these things, you can prevent the trauma and the pain of what's going to happen on the back end of things.
Right. See, the thing is, like, I completely am hearing what you're saying, and I think what you're saying, it takes a certain level of like being present in the moment to actually like
Exactly.
knowing what's going through your mind and not
Right.
getting carried away with the emotions, and also a certain level of putting your ego to the side and understanding that you don't have to take the action that you really want to.
Right.
But the thing is, with like the In-N-Out and like talking to your friends and stuff, when you're upset, and I've noticed this about myself, I very much so know what to do
Right.
to not be upset. It's just that I don't want to do
Right.
those things.
Right.
It's like I intention, and I'm very aware.
Right.
I would like to think that I'm an aware person. Like I know what's going on in my mind, and I know what to do not to feel those feelings. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes in certain situations, I'm like, you know what? No, I don't want to make myself feel better right now. Like I want to be sad. I
Right.
want to be angry. It's like you just get stuck in
Right.
that feeling, and you just can't shake it.
There's nothing wrong with being like, if somebody was positive all the time, that would be a red flag to me.
Those people scare me.
Right. And my younger brother has a joke. Like when he sees people that are like always positive, he's like, hey, watch out for that guy. Because when he gets upset, he's finna, and even me, like if I'm talking to a girl and she never gets upset with me, I don't like that. Like I need some type of pushback. If I do something, let me know. Like I want to see you react. No
Yeah.
reaction is a red flag.
Be human.
Right.
Right?
So you can have the whole toxic positivity thing, and I'm smiling on TikTok and dancing and laughing, but like I have days where I don't feel good, days where I take 4 or 5 days from posting to like relax, decompress and come back. But when you feel shitty and you're like, okay, I want to do this because I'm pissed off, you can process those emotions, say, okay, all right, I feel wronged in this situation, and now I want to lash back, and tell yourself, okay, I can lash back, but what's the price to pay? Think about it. If you lash back, like what's the price to pay? Like you need to assert yourself. You need to speak up when things, when you don't like things, and people don't do that. And these are the small things that lower your confidence. Literally, like when you don't enjoy something, and somebody said, oh, we're going to go hiking. You don't like to hike, right? But you're hiking because you think that they want you to hike. It's actually a form of manipulation. Like you're trying to manipulate the person to liking you. You don't want to do that. You don't enjoy doing that, so don't do that. Speak up for yourself. But when you don't speak up for yourself over and over and over and over, when you do react, you can have an intense, over the top reaction because you're not thinking about that person who wronged you. You're thinking about all the people in your life who ever wronged you, and now you're gonna lash back at all of them on this one situation.
Yeah, it's just thinking emotionally.
Right. And you see a lot with women, but this happens with guys too. Like what I see is when guys,
Give me a break. Guys have so much bigger egos. Women may be more emotional, right? But guys definitely have larger egos.
Oh,
averagely.
No, without a doubt. And a lot of times women feel a need to protect a man's ego.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's like as a successful girlfriend, fiance, wife, whatever you are, I feel like it should definitely be on top of your resume, protecting my partner's ego. Just like every woman like does that. It's like you always like, you know.
Right.
You always do that.
And not every woman is cut out for that. Right. I think you have to a lot of times people ask for certain things in life, but you're not sure if you're ready to take on that role. So if you want to be the partner to a man who is in the public eye, you have to understand. It depends on the type of guy, but more men are concerned, like if you talk about love languages, if his love language is words of affirmation, he's somebody who wants praise, within a local setting and also on the highest of highest, platforms. So if you have like a cheerleader, like some men want a cheerleader type, you don't want like a cheerleader, like you're losing 25-0.
And they're
still cheering.
Yeah.
It's the fourth quarter. You're aware you're going to lose.
Yeah.
But they're still cheering. They still have a happy face.
They're really supportive types.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Not everybody's cut out for that because it's going to appear one-sided sometimes, or you're going to want to run and, out him.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I'm not like that. Like I will support you, but like if you suck, I'm going to let you know you suck because I'm going to like want to like help you not suck.
In public or in private? In
private, always in private.
Right.
Yeah. No matter how much you suck, I'm even not just like boyfriend, even as a friend, I'm like in private or in public, I'm always gonna like back you up even if I don't agree with it. But when we go to private, I'm just gonna be like, yo, like that wasn't cool.
and for men, like a big sign of love is respect.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So sure. I think we have an easier time doing that amongst each other. So like even with my roommates, like we've moved from different parts of the country to come here to do TikTok and be content creators. So we all, to be honest, we all have an ego because all of us, we would consider ourselves to be like a top dog or maybe an alpha male. I hate alpha and all these different, I hate trying to characterize something, but like we all, from wherever we came from, we were like maybe a star in our respective areas. And you come out to Southern California and you're a nobody because everybody around you
is somebody.
Right. So you have all these egos in one house and you have to be very careful because I think I'm the shit. I don't say it, but that's how I feel about myself, right? Because if you say it, it becomes arrogance. If you just think it, it's confidence. That's how I see it. And then the next guy thinks this way about himself, and then this guy thinks that way, and that guy thinks that way. So you have to be very intentional with how you choose your words. Try not to embarrass somebody on a public platform or in a group message because we all feel this way about ourselves. Yeah. So we don't walk on eggshells, but we're very upfront with each other. Like, hey, if I didn't like something, I might post somebody and say, hey, bro, that wasn't cool or whatever. Because you know how it feels for somebody to pull you aside and to ask you certain things. But that public embarrassment is where the issue comes from. And that's when the over-the-top reaction comes. And that's when you know you shouldn't do this, but you're going to do it anyway because you want that person to feel your pain.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I feel you. Ego is such a weird thing. It's like this big balloon, right? And you just like give it like one little like tiny like and it just right? You have to be real. Like egos are so fragile.
With guys and even for myself, like that's something that I had to work on over time because like I had to get to the point where like I'm in grad school working, I'm trying to get a doctorate, I'm trying to do all these things. And back in my relationship back then, I would say my ego was quite fragile because like I have all these things that I'm working on and I see myself as this person. So if you do this thing to me on like a large, scope, it's going to make me feel, okay, well, you're trying to embarrass me. You're coming for me, So the male ego is definitely, it's an interesting thing because a lot of times if you don't understand how important it is for a guy to be respected on like the highest level, it can come to you as a surprise. Like you're gonna feel sometimes like, oh, I'm having to like constantly butter him up, and make him appear to be this person that you might not think he actually is.
Yeah, and honestly, like the whole respect thing is not just like buttering people up. It's not just like let's think like in terms of like relationship. Let's say you want to protect your boyfriend's ego, right? It's not always just like, oh baby, you're so great, you're like so like just amazing and so confident, so alpha. Like that to me is just so bullshit, because I told you, like, I'm not that super like cheerleading, like supportive. Like I actually like give a lot of shit to you know, just people that I'm really close to,
which is a good thing,
right? But for example, respect to me and how it shows itself is just so much more in the details. Like here's an example of something that actually somebody else brought it to my attention. I didn't even notice it. Let's say like me and my boyfriend go to a club, right? And we're waiting in line, which I probably wouldn't have to do if I was like, you know, with my girls or my girlfriends in LA. That's a normal thing. But, you know, obviously I go with my boyfriend and I happily wait in line. And like, you know, let's say like this dude comes that I know from before. He's like this promoter or whatever. And he's like saying hi to me, blah, blah, blah. And like, kind of doesn't really acknowledge my boyfriend all that well, as much as I would like him to. And he offers to get us in. So I'm like, no, we're good. We'll just wait here. So like somebody told somebody told me like that to me was like, I thought that was so respectful to your boyfriend. I was like, oh really? Oh, okay. I never thought of it like that. But I can see that. I can see that.
Especially in the South, you know, that's how we are. Like if somebody were to come up to me and a girl that I'm dating, they would always come and address me first.
Say hi.
If I see you and your boyfriend out, you know, if I see you by yourself, that's different. But if I see you with him, it's a respect thing to go up and introduce yourself to the guy. You know, because as guys, like, you know, sometimes subconsciously you'll size yourself up with another guy. And you're like, who's this guy? You know, so like when you see that they're together, even if you don't know that they're a couple, you always, you know, you err towards the safe side. So you're going to say, hey, my name is Kojo, so, hey. And then
acknowledge them.
Based off of that reaction, then you greet, you know, the girlfriend, the wife, the fiance, whoever it may be. But you definitely have to, you know, respect the guy, you know, beforehand. You know, that's how we do things in the South, you know.
No, and I totally see that, but it's like, and it's like, it's those little things. It's like how you make people feel, right? It's like you might not even notice it, because that could totally be something that, like, let's say you get in a fight and you can forever defend yourself on how you're not wrong, because logically, if you were to go inside, oh baby, like he knows me and like I got us in, like what's wrong with that? All those, like, if you're trying to like go in the details and like logically, you're not gonna get it anywhere. But it's like how you make people feel. It's like that just, and logically you can't explain that. But like from a guy's point of view, it's like, you know what? That just didn't make me feel good. You know? That's all it comes down to.
And as guys, sometimes we struggle to be vocal when something doesn't make us feel good. You know, and I've learned, I mean, obviously, like, same thing from a professional standpoint. I've learned the importance of saying, hey, this did not make me feel good. And like now, especially like with, you know, the roommates back at the house, I think we do a good job of like pulling each other aside and saying, hey, this didn't make me feel good. Like, you know, I want to bring this up to you. And that's a really neat thing, because back in the day, growing up as guys, we wouldn't talk about these things. If something didn't make us feel good, we would act.
Like bottle it up.
Bottle up until the point of agitation. And then at that point, you're ready to fight somebody, because you know, the only thing you know is, and I mean, this is how we all kind of grew up in the South. Like, like you fight to get a point across, because that's the only way people would listen. But if you sat down and say, hey, this didn't make me feel good when you did this, this, and that, you could avoid a lot of, you know, trouble. So it's important. That's why I always say, like, take mental notes on how you feel when you're around certain people.
Oh my God,
you know?
yes. I love that.
Like if I leave an interaction with somebody that I met for the first time and I feel really good about it, I'm like, you know what, that was a cool ass person. I think this is somebody who could possibly be my circle. But if you leave an interaction with somebody,
you're drained.
And you're drained. Like if I bring somebody over to the house and I'm like, hey, I got these electric bikes or whatever. If I bring somebody over and I'm showing them love, because I like to be a good host. I like to go out of my way to make you feel comfortable. But there's two types of people that you feel like you have to host and entertain every separate way.
Second, yes.
And there's people who can kind of seamlessly fit in.
Flow.
it's dope when you have somebody who could just come in and just kind of ease their way in. But like when you have to host somebody, or like when you have to constantly check and see are they okay, or like people can drain your energy. You have to pay attention to that, because it doesn't mean that you shouldn't be friends with them, but you have to maybe limit your interactions with that person. Maybe you all don't click like that, and maybe they're anytime they come around, like if somebody anytime you all connect, they're always talking about the bad. Like, oh, LA is so negative. People out here are so vain, blah, blah, blah. People can be self-centered here, but I choose to see the positive. Like, are you hanging around people who make you feel good about yourself? People who speak like positivity into the air, with a sense of realism. Because if you're at the point where it's toxic positivity, I feel like you can cross over into delusion quite easily. But are you around people who keep you accountable? And like out here, you need people like that who will say, you're not doing, the best you can do. Like, you have so much more potential. You're waking up at 11 o'clock every day. You can wake up at 8. Literally, these people will make you feel like, okay, I don't feel bad about myself, but I know I can do more. So I pay attention to how I feel around certain people. That really lets me know, okay, I'm on the right track, or maybe I could do better. Because the more you do, it's harder to find people who support you and people who will let you know what you need to hear. It's really hard to find people like that. So when you have somebody who holds you accountable, but also doesn't want to destroy your ego when they criticize you, that's somebody that you have to hold on to.
Yeah. The paying attention to your inner, like, it's like your gas tank, right?
Yeah.
It goes to like full and empty. And it's like, I wish I knew this earlier in life.
Right.
Because I just had so many people around me where I would defend them in my own head and just be like, no, they have a good heart, they have good intentions. And I would defend them in my own head. Like, I didn't even bring it up with them, but then I would always be drained.
Right.
Always be drained. And
it'll drain you.
And then slowly I realized, you know what? I don't fuck with you. So why do I have to keep you around all the time?
Right.
Like, let me be a little selfish. Like, just like keep people at arm's length. Like, not everybody is just supposed to be like close to you all the time.
Right.
What is gaslighting? I know, like,
gaslighting.
Quick getaway.
No. Gaslighting is something that we don't talk about enough, and I'm so happy.
You hear it all the time,
right?
But I don't think anybody like actually knows like what it actually means.
So gaslighting, believe it or not, it can go both ways. You can have it from man to, woman to man,
sure.
Or even in homosexual relationships, or even like boss, employee, it can be same sex.
Sure.
So gaslighting is when you're interacting with somebody and they intentionally manipulate you and they throw you off to where you're walking on eggshells. You don't know if you're coming or you're going. You don't know if you're going left or right. Like, you're talking to somebody and they make you feel like you're crazy. You're starting to doubt reality. So a classic example of gaslighting, between a man and a woman, like, I might tell you, hey, you're supposed to do this for me. And you're like, oh, I didn't know that I was supposed to do that. And I'm like, oh, no, you told me that you were going to have the place clean. You said you were going to walk the dog. Meanwhile, we never agreed to that. And the more I talk to you over and over, you start to trick yourself into thinking, oh, well, maybe I did say I agreed to walk the dog. And then you start to feel bad about yourself, and you start to feel worthless and empty. And you're like, okay, I'm not good enough. And this person has pretty much put you into the mode to where your reality is distorted. You're thinking that, oh, wow, I didn't know that I didn't know that I'm not a good girlfriend. But now I know that I'm a horrible girlfriend. I'm a bad person because I didn't take the dog out, and I'm constantly letting him down.
Right.
And people can easily manipulate you with that. And you won't know whether you agree to do something or not. And on the flip side, a lot of times women will label guys, like, you can have a guy who's trying to do right. You'll hear words like, oh, he's a no good. Or sometimes women will call a guy a narcissist in an attempt to gaslight them. Or I guess today the term you'll hear is, oh, he's a fuckboy. But if he's a guy who's trying to do good, I mean, how you define a fuckboy? Like, if he's not fucking anything, is he a fuckboy? Like, you'll throw a label on him. Or a lot of times women will accuse a guy of cheating. That's one that I've seen a lot. And one that's happened to me, literally, like, I told friends, like, I was in a Hooters, on my phone. Literally, and then the girl,
that's cheating. If you're at a Hooters, that's cheating. I'm kidding.
It was her idea to go to Hooters.
Oh.
So, we're in there. She's getting a salad or whatever. I'm on my phone just scrolling. And then as we're leaving, she's like, oh, you were staring at that girl's ass.
And it's like, how do you not? It's right there.
Right.
It's like right there.
If somebody's walking by, if you're at the airport, right? Like I just flew in from Nashville. If you're at the airport and somebody walks like by your visual field, you'll naturally look up. So I may have naturally looked up, but like to check somebody out, that's me fixating on like a girl's ass for a good 3-4 seconds. And I'm like, whoa, what's going on? And then I realized, oh, this is an attempt at manipulation. You're trying to gaslight me. And when women gaslight, it's more subtle. Like when a guy gaslights, we can pick up on that quite easily. Okay, he's trying to manipulate this girl, lying for no reason. He's making her feel like she's crazy. And a lot of times you don't know you're being gaslit until you're out of the relationship. Like people have been in relationships for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. The whole time they're being manipulated, they're being gaslit. And the issue with that is it takes the autonomy out of your hands. Like you don't know that it's happening to you. So you don't know if your decisions were really your decisions.
Yeah.
You know, you don't know if you agreed to go on that trip. You don't know if you agreed to do this, this, and that. Like your whole life, you feel like you've been betrayed and lied to. And then when you come out of that situation, you're going to be too scared to love again unless you get some professional help or you have some people who are really helpful who are around you. You're going to be apprehensive to like take on any type of commitment anymore because the last time you committed, you lost yourself completely. You were a whole different person. And that's how people stay in situations that don't serve them any good. Like people can be in situations for years. And once they get out, they're like, I had no idea that I was stuck in this situation.
Right. Things only make sense in hindsight, which like it sucks. Like when you're in a situation, you just don't know what's going on a lot of times. And like a problem with that is, sure, there are a lot of times where a situation, a relationship like that is very like on the extreme sides, right? Like the girl or the guy are obviously manipulating and they're obviously gaslighting. But like let's say most of the time where it's not towards the extreme sides.
Right.
And most relationships where people don't mean to harm each other and hurt each other and they want their relationship to prosper and they want them to do good in the relationship and they lie somewhere in the middle, then what the problem is, because you mentioned gaslighting is distorting the reality.
Right.
Reality is different for each person. There is not one fixated reality where you can say, look, this is the truth, this is the reality, and you're over there.
Right.
Therefore, this is a problem.
Right.
Because my reality is different than yours. It's different than his. And like, there's not one reality. So when you say distorting reality, that makes it difficult because our realities are different.
Right. But for somebody to intentionally manipulate you and distort your perception on things, like if I came home and said, you were supposed to walk the dog, you're supposed to get the kids set up for Zoom, you're supposed to do all this stuff, and you didn't do it, but we had no prior conversation about that. Like, that's something that cannot be disputed. Like, whether or not I told you to do these things, whether you agree to do something or not, you can't dispute that. You know? Like, we know whether I told you to do this, yes or no, but this person will not say, oh, I texted you to do this, because you can go back and check a text message.
Yeah. There's like no proof.
Right.
Yeah.
They're going to say, oh, no, remember this morning when you're kind of asleep, like someone who's good at gaslighting you, it'll be people who gaslight, they won't bring like wild scenarios. They're not going to say, oh, remember I told you that you were supposed to, fly to San Diego and come back and do, like, it's going to be something that's believable. But, oh, you're supposed to do this. Oh, you're supposed to go to the store. Remember you forgot the milk and the eggs? Oh, you're so forgetful. Like, are you okay? Like, are you going through something? Are you losing your mind? Then you start to think, oh, I'm losing my mind. Like, literally, you can delude yourself into thinking that you're sick. You can trick yourself into thinking, oh, I'm less than, I'm no good because you've been stuck in this situation. Yeah. So somebody who's good at gaslighting, they'll gaslight you, and then they'll have moments where they praise you. They're going to give you intermittent, like, praise. Oh, you're the best. Because if it's full out gaslighting, you're going to leave. But it has to be somewhere to where it can be believable. Right. Kind of like half and half.
Right. So do you think the people who do that, right, are they evil or are they just like doing their best?
So it depends. Like if somebody, most of the times from what I've seen, they don't have an intent to be this bad person.
Right.
But that's a trauma response from something that they've gone through in their past. And their best way of being in a situation is to control it. So you're going to control it by manipulation. You don't feel good when you don't control things. So you're going to intentionally control the situation so that way you feel like you have say into anything that's going on. So it doesn't make you a bad person because in the sense that, oh, you want to damage this person. No, but you want this person to be in your world where you feel like you can control everything. So at the end of the day, it's still manipulation. Like even if your intent is good, you've still hurt somebody.
Right.
So, but then again, you can't have people who, if you say this person's a sociopath, some people do intentionally. I would say that's the minority.
That's such a minority.
Right. Yeah.
That's such a minority where someone is like
definitely the minority.
Obviously the problem.
Right.
It's very, very rare where you look at a problem and you, whether it's relationship or friendship, and you're like, okay, this person is obviously the problem.
Right.
Because every time somebody like comes to you and talks to you and like you do this for a living, I do it with my friends where like people come to you and they tell you their side of the story where the other person is always like the bad person and they're always crazy and they're always a narcissist and they're always the one doing the gaslighting. But I bet you had some part in that.
Right.
I bet. Maybe it's not 50-50. Maybe it's 70-30. Maybe it's 90-10.
Right.
But you had some part in
accountability,
that.
Yeah.
Some part in that.
Yeah.
So that's what makes it hard because there's not that fixated reality where like, this is the truth. You're obviously the good guy. He's obviously the bad guy. It's always like you guys' chemistry together. It's like maybe he's a control freak and you're kind of easy to push around.
Exactly.
So then it comes together and then that gets called gaslighting.
Yeah.
Or that person gets called a narcissist.
Right.
But then if that person goes with someone who is an even bigger of a narcissist, then they would be the pushover.
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like people's chemistry with each other like creates all these like things.
Dynamics. Yeah.
All these dynamics, sure. So, all right.
It's
I
quite
kinda,
interesting. Yeah.
Right?
I love these conversations.
So I kind of wanted to know what gaslighting is because like I hear it all the time and I'm like, I don't know what that really means.
It's a very common thing.
Yeah. People say it all the time and I'm like, do you know what that means? Are you just saying
it's a very common thing. But somebody who's really being gaslit, a lot of times you don't know until the relationship is over with.
Over.
Because like if you're in the middle of being gaslit, like if that's your current reality, and that's why, you have this whole debate about, women who are being abused, why do they stay? First of all, like my job is not to judge somebody for why they stay. I can't, like, I've never been a lady before. I cannot tell you why they choose to stay, but you respect their decision and you stay with them every step of the way. And, when they're willing to take help or, obviously I say if your safety is being compromised, you need to do what you need to do for yourself. But you never want to judge somebody who's in that situation because you don't know why they're staying. You don't know what's going on in their day to day, And
like, you don't know that person's history.
Right.
And how literally every moment of their life has led them to be in that place where that problem happens.
Right.
Right? Like even let's say someone who just tolerates abuse.
Right.
Right? Let's say like as like a strong woman who would never take anyone's bullshit, you look at that person and you're like, you're weak. Why don't you just fucking leave? Like, why don't you just stand up? It's not that simple. It's never that simple.
Never.
Right.
Never. And I had to learn that, through trial and error, like seeing women who would stay, or sometimes you would, get them through rehabilitation, you would help them out and they would still go back to that situation. And, I think that you can't judge. Like it's so much easier to go to a place of comfort, even if it's toxic for you, than to go through the pain of like reinventing yourself.
Right.
And that's why, like when we talk about self-care, whether you're on TikTok or Instagram, you have all these posts about self-care and people think self-care is going to the beach and living your best life. No, self-care is saying no to people that you love.
Yeah.
Like people or somebody you love for years and years, walking away from that person. Self-care is very difficult. And at the end of the day, it gives you a sense of fulfillment. It improves your confidence and makes you feel good about yourself. But in the day-to-day, month to month, maybe even years, you're gonna feel like an awful person for maybe cutting ties with family, cutting ties with somebody that you love. Like it's really, really hard to walk away from somebody that you love and still love. And as you love them, you're not with them, but it's for self-preservation.
Yeah.
That is very hard. And people don't talk about that. That's self-care.
Yeah.
People don't want to talk about that because it's too hard.
Yeah, when we think of self-care, like you said, like going to the beach, going to the spa, wearing a face mask, all the things that make you feel comfortable.
Right.
But in reality, actual self-care is all the things that make you uncomfortable. Saying no.
I love that way of putting it. Yeah.
Right? Saying no to the people, like you said, saying no to the people that like just keep dragging you to places that you don't want to go.
Exactly.
Maybe you don't have the money to spend. Maybe you don't want to be associated with, but like you feel like you have to say yes. Right? Or like maybe cutting people out of your life that just don't serve any purpose. They don't make you any money. They don't help you get any happier.
Right.
They don't teach you anything. They don't make you laugh. Self-care is cutting that out of your life. Self-care is like, I feel like it's being uncomfortable, not just comfortable all the time. It's like getting yourself out of bed and doing the hard things that like you don't really want to do.
Every single day. Yep.
Right.
It's very difficult. And now with the pandemic, this is the best time to practice this stuff. And like I say, if you didn't know who you were before, you definitely know who you are. Like the past, 12 to 14 months has exposed a lot about who we are as individuals. Like we've had time to sit at home and think about like, who am I? Like you've had time to expose the uncomfortable parts about yourself that you didn't like. That maybe you knew, but you try to put it off and put it on the back burner and say, well, maybe I can handle this later. No, you have to address it now. Like we really know exactly who we are now. So now it's just a matter of, do you want to do the work on yourself that you know you have to do, but are you trying to put it off? Like if not now, then when? This is the best time to really reinvent yourself and really start to do the things that you knew that you should have done, but
you would distract yourself.
It's too hard.
Distract yourself. I would always like that was kind of like always my thing, like sit with yourself. Like sit with your demons, sit with all the things that you wanted to achieve and you didn't, and that makes you not be confident. That makes you like feel you just look down on yourself, and then you distract yourself. You're like, yeah, let's go out, let's do this, let's do that, and it's like, and you go out and people are partying on top of couches at the club, and you're like, what are you celebrating? Like I want to know, like, what exactly are we celebrating? Like, what's going on here? And now that distraction has been cut out, and as you said, like a year of people just sitting home and being like, okay, what do I actually like? What actually like fuels my soul? What are those demons that I like run away from? And like I've been hearing so much now, people talking about journaling, and like meditation has been a popular thing for a while, but I feel like journaling and morning routines. Like asking someone what your morning routine is like the new what's your zodiac sign.
What is your morning routine then?
Oh, you want to hear it?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you'd never ask. Okay. So I wake up at 6 and I
love that.
Put my tea. I stretch for 10-15 minutes, whole body. And then I do breath work. I do Wim Hof breath work. I should actually put it on the website for people who want. It's on YouTube for free. Do you know Wim Hof?
Heard of it. Describe it again.
Wim Hof is this guy who has, I think, like 28 Guinness World Records of like just these like insanely crazy things that he has done. He has like climbed Mount Everest in his boxers, and he has like swam under extreme cold water. He can like for
cool
like
guy,
a really, really long time, and he can like control the temperature in his body. And he does all of this temperature related physical activities by controlling his breath. So his breath work is really popular. I started his breath work a year and a half ago. And it had, I think, like 4 million views on YouTube. And now it has like 23 million.
Your video or his video?
His video.
Okay.
Yeah, no. And in like 1 year. So it's gone really popular, which makes me happy because people are getting on this wave of actual self-care, not just like,
exactly, the real deal.
Right.
Yeah.
So then I do the breath work, which is like 11 minutes after my stretching. And then I meditate for 10, 13, 15 minutes. And then I start my day. I drink my tea with honey and lemon, and then I start my day.
Okay.
Yeah, I do my schoolwork. I do my podcast. I go for a workout. Sometimes if I'm like really trying to like have a real good me day, I'll journal a little bit. Yeah, but that's just
solid.
Such a great way to start a day.
Yeah.
Like I literally start every day so happy and so grateful. And some days I literally...
Gratitude is huge.
Gratitude. Yes. Huge. So I write my gratitude. So, okay. After my meditation, what I do from a night before, I have written on a notebook what my next day's tasks are going to look like. So when I wake up, I try to write like 1, 2, 3 gratitudes every day. And I'm just like constantly thinking about it too. Like, I'm just a really grateful fucking person for everything.
And that's huge, and I'm intentionally grateful as well. Like the small things like waking up, being able to have a sound mind, being able to have all your body parts working, being able to listen to a podcast, being able to call family members and friends. Like being grateful is a superpower.
Yeah. When we have so many of those fucking things, like especially as a woman, this is like the best time ever to be alive, In
terms of
just rights and
women
being
overachieving.
Heard.
Yeah,
being heard, having rights, especially where I come from. That's not like a really great thing over there. So especially me coming from another country, I feel like I am as grateful as I am because I realize how bad shit can really be.
I can tell that, and I really like what you said, that this is the best time to be alive for a woman. I've never heard it said that way, and like you cut on the news, you see a lot about sexual assault and women being attacked, which is very unfortunate. And these things happen, and we have to speak about it so that way, we can put an end to it.
The fact that you see it on the news is a big step because it didn't used to be there.
I'm so happy that you're saying that, because now, like, when you put a name and a face to it, once people see it, then they know, okay, this is happening. Women are living like this. This is how reality is for them on a day in and day out basis. So because it's being broadcast, it gives you a chance to like bring it to the forefront and to do some sort of change, whereas it was suppressed in the past. So people knew these things were happening, but nobody really talked about it because it's like, okay, women are being abused or assaulted, but we're going to suppress it. We're not going to bring it to the media, and now it's being seen. So this is actually a great time. Well, I mean, it sounds better coming from you because, like, as guys, you see it and you're devastated this is happening. But to see you have that perspective to where you're like, okay, it's unfortunate that this is happening, but I'm happy that people are seeing that's happening. So now we can start to make a change.
Exactly.
I think that's a powerful thing.
Exactly. It's like, sure, there's still so much more that needs to be done and needs to be improved.
Completely
agree. But let's not forget how far we've come.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that with yourself too. It's like you wake up and you take everything for granted and you forget that one day you used to dream of everything that you have now.
I completely agree.
Sure, have all those goals for your future. Have all the things in your mind that you want to do, but like still know how far you've come. Just like the same thing with like women's rights or anything else like LGBTQ. I think there's a at the end of it now for asexual, so it's LGBTQA.
Okay, it's always changing, and I'm always making an intentional effort to learn. I want to learn so I can advocate for that population.
Yeah, that word is gonna go on it's gonna become a sentence.
As long as it goes on, just let me know and let me know how I can learn and advocate. Yeah,
right. And it's like, sure, there's still so much more that can be done, but like, let's be happy for how much has gotten done, and so that takes the anger away. Right. When you realize that, like, okay, we've come a long way. So now, okay, we still have to do a lot more. Let's just not be angry about it.
Exactly.
Because that's also off-putting. When you're just like yelling at people, like they're not listening to you.
Right. And that energy that you're giving off, like people are going to feel your energy and it's going to make them want to either be around you more or it's going to want to make them distance yourself, away from you. And it's like, what if I told you that the things that happened in your life actually happened for you, as opposed to them happening to you.
Right.
Think about that, like all the trauma, the pain, the heartache, it brought you all to this one specific moment where you're enlightened and you know all these things. And sometimes people have to go through something before they can understand. Like you'll see, okay, so-and-so went through this and that. But once you go through it, is a different type of lesson. Like, you know, if you didn't know before, you really know now.
Yeah.
So you can take it as a blessing if you're able to see it like that. Okay, this is what happened in my life. It happened for me. Now that I know about all these things, I'm going to proceed better. And I'm grateful that this happened for me and it didn't break me.
Mm-hmm.
Something that might happen to you could happen to somebody else and it could break them completely.
Exactly.
But it could be your super strength, your superpower, and propel you to new heights because you went through it in the past and now you know, so you won't make that same mistake twice.
Right.
Certain things you have to only feel once in your life and you won't do it again.
Yeah, it comes down to what we were talking about earlier, like thinking logically and thinking emotionally.
Right.
It's like if you are the person who just takes everything personally, gets offended easily, reacts emotionally, just sit home. Like, just because everything's gonna hurt you.
Right.
This is one of my favorite quotes. Life is a comedy to those who think logically and is a tragedy to those who think emotionally. And I think this is just so true.
I've never heard it before. I like that.
Yeah, I don't know where I saw it, but it immediately became like one of my top 3 quotes ever. I should know who it's by. I don't remember their name. But I like think it's great. Though. I think it's great. It's like if you just that quote went up. Like, I'm not even going to unpack it because it speaks for itself. It's like if you're just an extremely emotional person who just like takes everything personally, you're constantly going to think everyone wants to attack you.
Right. And it's best when you can understand that, you know, the world is bigger than just yourself. You know, so if you don't get a job promotion, maybe they didn't need somebody for that specific role at that time. It doesn't mean that you're not a good employee. You know, maybe you do go to work and you bust your ass off every day. But maybe they didn't need a lead manager or whatever job you're applying for. Maybe you applied for a role, you know, in the show. They already filled it. Maybe they got somebody who was less qualified, but you don't have to worry about that.
Or maybe they got their cousin.
Yeah.
Who's applying for the job and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
That's just how it is.
It comes down to timing, you know, so it's always important, like if something doesn't go your way, instead of internalizing it and saying, oh, I'm not good enough, timing, things don't work out. Like maybe if you got ghosted, maybe they got in a car accident and their phone was gone. I mean, a million different things could have happened. But when you sit there and you put it towards yourself like, oh, I wasn't good enough, that's why this relationship didn't work out, that's why I missed out on this job opportunity, that's why I'm not good at anything I do, is going to lower your confidence and sink you further and further and further into a dark place that you probably don't want to be at.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, when something bad happens to you, it's okay to be sad. Like, don't think that any of what we're saying means that when bad things happen, you're just immediately supposed to think logically and just like be like, oh, it's all okay. Like, no, take the time, be sad, be a little depressed, cry, talk to whoever you need to talk, journal for sure. You know, do whatever you need to need. Like, take that time to be sad. Like, actually be sad. But then
I was just gonna say, I think women set the blueprint for that. Like when something happens, you know, you all get together with your girlfriends and you talk and you express your emotions. That whole process.
You all, as if like all women do that.
Well, not all women, but a good deal. I don't want to say the majority, but a lot of women are able to rely on their friends, and it's a very cathartic thing. You get to process your emotions, whereas guys, we just now started to make it okay to be like, okay, hey man,
talk about things.
What's going on? And it used to be back in the day, like let's say your girlfriend cheated on you or something like that. Like you would clown a guy for that. It'd be like, oh, you weren't man enough to hold your girl down.
That's just so insensitive and just so wrong.
That's how it used to be growing up.
Is that gaslighting or no?
When a guy does it to a guy?
Yeah. Or does gaslighting have to be a guy to a girl or a girl to a guy?
Gaslighting can be from anybody to anybody. It can be from employee.
Distorting reality. That dude is obviously distorting reality when he says something like that.
In a sense, because in a sense, you can take it from that angle to where he's making you feel like you're not good enough. It's verbal abuse.
Right.
Regardless of how you want to, categorize it, it is verbal abuse because you're attributing her actions to your lack of something, like your lack of masculinity. Like because of you, she cheated. Now she may have had her own issues, but because of you, because you're not good enough, she cheated. And back in the day, like guys would clown each other for that. Oh, like you're not good enough.
Verbal abuse.
Right. And now it's gotten to the point where guys are supporting guys more.
More, yeah.
And I love to see it online. Like guys will be like, hey, are you okay? You good? And when a guy gets to the point where he says, hey, I went through this myself, it removes the shame.
Right.
And shame is such a huge thing. Shame will make you feel like you're the only person in the world going through it. Meanwhile, everybody else is going through it. But in your head, oh, I'm the only one going through this, so I must be like, not worthy. So when people talk about their issues, it makes you feel less alone. And that's a very comforting feeling, So I love to see guys rally around other guys. It's a great thing.
Yeah, guys are fine. Men are finally showing a little bit more sensitivity than they used to. I like it so much. I actually posted this TikTok a while ago, which was not welcomed.
What was the TikTok?
I made this video where I said, let's normalize these things for men.
Okay.
I might have gone a little overboard with it, but
what'd you post? Normalize what?
So I said normalize men crying.
Okay.
Normalize men seeking therapy.
Okay.
Normalize men like wanting to talk about their emotions and opening up, because guys are just so much like not taught to do those things. Like,
right.
I saw this children's book where it said, today I was sad and I wanted to cry, but instead I was brave.
Oh.
Which says that if you're sad and if you cry, then you're not brave.
Right.
So it's like all these like wrong things are being taught, but now we're finally like fixing those things. Now I feel like now we're finally like so aware that like we're fixing all these things, that it kind of also feels wrong, because now I feel like we're falling from the other end of the spectrum. Now people are so sensitive. Now everything you say is wrong.
Yeah.
So it's like
very difficult.
Well, like it's like I don't know what is right and what is wrong anymore.
I'm not sure either. And as we're both in the space where we can categorize ourselves as influencers, and cancel culture is prevalent, where people are looking for any slip up to shame you on a public platform. But standing on what you believe while not intentionally offending somebody is the best thing you can do. Like, I don't mean to offend any group of people by what I do or say, but as long as I have the best intentions, that's all you can do. Like, there's things that we universally accept as bad things, like racism, homophobia, transphobia, sexism, like the things that we all like don't like. Aside from that, we should all be respectful of people's opinions. Like, you'll never agree with somebody 100%. And it's okay to not agree with somebody, but also to coexist like in the same environment.
Just move on.
Yeah.
You touched on something that I actually like hold as a really, really important principle in my life. Like, when it comes to intentions, like anything that annoys me and bothers me, which happens a lot. It happens like all the time as just humans with these like large egos. Right. Which actually I don't like to think of myself as someone with large ego, but I really think so.
There's nothing wrong with having that if you believe so.
But you have some ego, like everybody has an ego, sure. Right? It's just like bigger or smaller. Wait, what was I gonna say?
You were talking about your ego.
No, but before that,
you said something along the lines of
intentions.
Right, intentions.
So it's like, every little thing that's gonna like hurt your ego, it's either like people's like behavior, their actions, or their opinions, or sometimes their jokes. Right? Jokes bother people all the time.
Right.
And the only thing that has helped me a lot with like not ever getting offended, and my friends will tell you this, like it's extremely hard to offend me. Is the fact that I think about people's intentions all the time. And it's like when somebody says something or they do something, I try to put myself from knowing them. You got to know people a little bit to know that. It's you kind of think where they come from. Did they mean to hurt you? And most of the time, people don't mean to hurt you. Like 99% of the time, people don't mean to hurt people. It's just that we have all these like insecurities and fears, and we just say stupid shit. We want to be accepted. We want to be funny. So Like you say something, you do something, and it just gets completely misunderstood. And then now it's offensive, and now it's like this big old thing. But if you just like stop, take a step back, think about the person's intention. Did they mean to be an asshole?
Right. But
probably not.
What was the last thing that somebody said to offend you, and how did that make you feel?
I want to ask you about ADHD, actually.
Yeah.
I know it's an extremely prevalent thing these days. I think that we all have ADHD a little bit, just as like a side effect of just like these extremely fast lives we live, and just constantly being distracted by something novel that just like creates this like extremely short attention spans, right? So to some extent, I feel like maybe I could be very wrong. I'm not a doctor, but I feel like to some extent, a little bit of ADHD might just be normal, especially for our generation. But then when is ADHD a diagnosed case? Like, what do you see in a person where you go, okay, that level of it is normal, but now you're a diagnosed ADHD and you need to take medication?
Right. So, I mean, for kids, you have to see it in more than one environment, because you can easily have a kid who, you know, the teacher say, oh, he or she is, they're in a world of their own, you know, they kind of zone out, you know, they're either like spaced out all the time, or they're super hyperactive, or at home, the parents can see that, but you might not see that at school. But, you know, at least with kids, you want to see it in, you know, more than one environment. You know, so if you see a similar thing at home, to where the kid's very spaced out, or if the kid's hyperactive, then you start to think about, okay, maybe this child might actually have ADHD. Maybe they're hyperactive, or maybe they're inattentive, or maybe it's a combined type of thing. And with adults, interestingly enough, when an adult comes in, you know, for evaluation of ADHD, they don't really present with the classic signs and symptoms of, you know, inattentiveness or being hyperactive. They more so present with anxiety and depression, or just fatigue from having to mentally exhaust themselves because they can't stay focused on one thing. They can't, you know, they jump into conversations, or the task at hand, they can't finish it. You know, they'll have like 35 different browsers open. They'll start one task, and then
I'm looking at all my all my tabs open.
They'll start one task, and then at 9 o'clock, and you finish it at 10 p.m. because you started it, and then you left to go get some Starbucks. And then when you're at Starbucks, you saw your friend Jenny, and then Jenny was getting married. And you're like, oh, Jenny got married to Kevin? Oh, what's Kevin doing? And then you go through this whole, you know,
so it's the lack of focus.
Or lack of focus, or, you know, if you're hyperactive to the point where it's maladaptive to your day-to-day well-being. Like if you have things to get done that you didn't get done because you were all over the place. And then because of that, you start to think less of yourself. Then we start to think of, oh, this might be clinical ADHD.
Right. So do you prescribe, for example, Adderall?
At times. So I was working in forensic psychiatry back in Virginia, and a lot of the patients that I had, you know, they would have diagnoses such as, you know, bipolar or schizophrenia. And with Adderall, there's a slight chance of psychosis, so you have to be careful with that. But if somebody, you know, it's all about, you know, weighing the pros and cons. So sometimes I would think Adderall would be, you know, appropriate, and sometimes we would go with like a non-stimulant like Strattera. But in my
what do you go off of? Let's say I'm a patient. I come to your office. You're capable of prescribing me medication, right? And I come to you and I'm like, Doc, I cannot focus very well for long periods of time. I tend to leave things halfway done. I tend to be scatter-minded. What would you need to see in me to diagnose me as an ADHD patient and prescribe me medication? Like, are there like certain things that you need to see?
So you have many different questionnaires that you can give. So depending on I can give a questionnaire, and then I can let you fill it out. And a lot of times it's self-reported what you say is going on. And the thing with women is a lot of times women will go undiagnosed, because if a woman doesn't fit like the classical picture of, like, you know, when you think of ADHD, you think of like a Caucasian, you know, young male, like jumping out of his chair, being like super hyperactive. That's the classical picture of ADHD that sometimes we, default, our thinking into. So you see that guy, oh, give him some Adderall, and then, some people say, oh, turn him into a zombie. But as an adult, you have to listen to the patient, and a lot of times, prescribers are hesitant to give Adderall because it's such a highly abused drug.
Right.
You can go to any college campus and make a killing off of selling Adderall.
And you could actually fuck that patient up even more than when they first came to your office by prescribing them a medication that could have just been avoided.
Exactly.
So that's why I want to see, sure, I can fill out the questionnaire. I can tell you all the things. But you as a doctor, what do you need to see in people to diagnose them with ADHD?
As a clinician, I have to, of course, give the questionnaire to see what's going on with ADHD, to see, and if I believe that there could be some ADHD there, you still have to go through a whole psychiatric evaluation, and you want to rule out bipolar disorder, you want to rule out schizophrenia, you want to rule out depression, you want to rule out, get family history and see, is there a history of bipolar, depression, schizophrenia, and all these things. And if you rule that out and there seems to be symptoms of ADHD there, then you would say, okay, we'll give this person Adderall or Ritalin or
But
Concerta.
what are those symptoms that will
of ADHD?
That will, yeah. But all the things that I mentioned are symptoms of ADHD. But then to what level would you say that's normal and that's when you are a diagnosed case and you need to take medication?
If you're a podcaster and this is what you do for a living, and you're constantly late on your podcast, and you're constantly late on paying your bills, and you're forgetting anniversaries with your boyfriend, and it's leading to issues to where he's saying, hey, I don't think you're taking this relationship seriously. You forgot my birthday. And you're like, oh, I was overwhelmed. I'm behind on this. I'm behind on that. I'm behind on this. I'm behind on that. And if your inattentiveness, or if let's say you're hyperactive and you're jumping into conversations and it's making you feel bad in a social setting, and then you're like, okay, wow, I feel like I'm less of a person because in social situations, I come off as awkward because I keep jumping in. If it's disrupting your day-to-day, your affairs to the point where it's maladaptive, then you start to think of a clinical diagnosis of ADHD for an adult, because you're going to come in with anxiety, you're going to come in with depression, you're going to feel tired because you're having to exhaust your brain. Let's say you enjoy horseback riding, right? If you enjoy it, it won't be difficult to focus on that thing. But if it takes some type of high level executive function to do, or even podcasting, I don't know what software y'all use, whether it's Audacity to break it up, or I don't know what your role is. But if you can't get that done to where you're constantly late, it's causing issues for you at work, it's causing issues for you at home, then I more so start to think, okay, this really could be ADHD. Because an adult who comes in, they wouldn't come in with the classic symptoms oh, I can't focus, or I can't concentrate, or because then every clinician will start to think, because you have to rule out, are they doctor shopping? Are they going to different prescribers and getting an Adderall here and Vyvanse
which seems
here?
like the thing to do.
But there's programs in every state where you can check put the patient's name in and see where they're getting controlled substances from. So if somebody comes in and they're not getting controlled substances from somewhere else and they're struggling in their day-to-day, I always say believe the patient. Give them a 30-day supply of a stimulant, or if you're worried about psychosis, give them a non-stimulant medication for ADHD like Strattera, and see how they respond to it. If they respond well, okay, then you move on from there. Normally you bring them in a month later or 2 weeks later.
What's responding well? Just being more focused and getting your shit done?
Yes. So if you came in and you were having relationship issues, your podcasts were behind.
Right.
You're paying late fees on your bills, but you have the money, but you just can't organize your bills because it's so much. If you come in 2 weeks or in a month and you're able to have less issues in your relationship, or your podcasts are on time, if you're getting enough sleep at night because everything is focused, then that's the adequate response to the medications.
So it's when it throws your life off of balance and off of harmony to the point where it's affecting your personal and your social life.
Right. It's gonna
negatively.
Right. It's gonna affect you, and it's gonna be noticeable.
Right.
It's gonna be very noticeable. And a lot of times when let's say your basement is dirty, right? If you put your mind to it, you might clean it in an hour or two, but you'll dread doing that one thing, and you'll make it this huge thing, and you'll have a hard time doing your day-to-day tasks because you have like a long list of things to do.
Yeah.
But you don't have a priority.
Yeah, I just feel like that's so normal.
But so certain parts are normal, but if it gets to a point where it's impacting you in your day-to-day, like let's say if you don't submit your podcast, then that's how you generate your income, and you're not getting income because you can't do this one thing, then it's become maladaptive to you. Because somebody who doesn't have ADHD, they'll be able to at least at a minimum get what they have to do done. There's things that we want to do, and of course, you can jump on TikTok for 5 minutes and be there for 5 hours. I think that can happen to anybody.
Absolutely.
But somebody who doesn't have ADHD and they're more so neurotypical, I believe that individual will be able to do the minimum tasks that they have to get done that one day, and they might not get to all the extra stuff. But somebody who does have ADHD, like, you're going to see it within them. They're going to miss out on opportunities. They're going to miss out on things that they want to do because they can't either focus or they can't concentrate what they want to do on that one main thing.
And have they tried other things? Like, normally your patients that come to you and they ask whether they're anxious or they suffer from depression or ADHD, all these like really prevalent like mental issues. Have they usually tried other things like I don't know, waking up early morning, meditating, learning how to manage your time, and learning about discipline and those things? Or is it just like, oh, let me go take some Adderall?
So it depends. And that's why, like, a lot of people will ask me this on like a TikTok live, and that's the importance of taking like a full psychiatric evaluation. Because if depression is prevalent in their family, like with depression, you can have somebody who lacks concentration. They're tired all the time. It's hard for them to get out of bed. Sometimes people who are depressed, like, their limbs will feel so heavy. We call it limb paralysis, where your limbs feel so heavy, even getting out of bed is like a huge chore. Because like just moving your limbs, you can't get out. You feel like you're stuck. So if depression is prevalent in their family history, then you want to make sure that it's not depression that's going on. But if you've ruled out enough things, and sometimes you can have depression and ADHD. A lot of times ADHD, it doesn't come by itself. I say it comes with like a cousin, either anxiety, depression, or bipolar, or many different things. So you have to weigh the pros and cons and say, okay, will this medication make it better or worse? And I say, like, I call that Adderall the Michael Jordan of all stimulants. I think it's the best one, but it also comes with a lot of side effects.
Right. Well, the thing about bipolar is that you absolutely need medication. What is it? Is it lithium that has been like bipolar? The most? Yeah.
So
that has been like a really successful medication for like a long time.
It's interesting that you bring that up because a lot of people shy away from lithium because sometimes it can have side effects, and if you don't have good kidney function, then maybe we don't think of lithium. But lithium is actually the evidence shows that that's the most effective medication for bipolar. It reduces suicidality by 7 times.
Right.
It's a wonder drug, and actually, it's a natural salt. So certain populations that have lithium in the water actually have a lower level of violence. So we were talking about violence earlier in the podcast. So lithium is I consider it to be a wonder drug. I've seen it change people's lives, like in front, like my eyes have seen it. And the way I was trained, lithium is a great medication. So if somebody has like a severe bipolar, like bipolar 1, that can land you in an inpatient hospital.
Bipolar 1 is more severe than bipolar 2, right?
Right.
Because bipolar 2 is hypomania, whereas bipolar 1 is actual mania.
Right. So bipolar 1, you have to have a manic episode, like a full-blown manic episode. Normally lasts a week, but if you have a manic episode where you're just, you're driving your car super fast, you've maxed out 4 credit cards, you're having unprotected sex.
Sounds like every other American.
No, there's a level, because my thing is sometimes, like, I've had patients who've come in and they have multiple sexual partners, but it's not outside of what they normally do. They use protection. Maybe their partners know. Whether it's
like one after another. It's like you don't finish one thing, you just like jump from one to another.
Right. But some people can actually have sex with multiple people, and it might not be a manic episode. And sometimes, like, sex is something that people shame people for. Like, oh, you're having sex with all these people. But if people know, if you're being safe, it comes when you have like a reckless you don't care for your body.
Now people are gonna call fuckboys manic people.
Right, but if that quote unquote fuckboy is letting his partners know, hey,
he might be.
I'm seeing you, but I'm seeing other people, and they're using protection.
Mm-hmm.
You know, normally, like when somebody has a manic phase, like they'll destroy their marriage. Like multiple affairs here and there, babies will be involved, diseases will be involved, credit cards will be maxed out. Like it's
just a mess.
Severe bipolar can really destroy a family.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so and you actually have a lot of knowledge about bipolar, which is really neat, because people don't understand the difference between bipolar 1 and 2. Bipolar 2, you have to have a depressive phase and then that hypomania. And for me as a clinician, it's been really hard to identify hypomania because you can function with hypomania.
Right.
It's really difficult. That's the hard part. Like
sometimes I feel like I have hypomania. I swear, like I'm just like so goal oriented, and I just like cannot shut up about things, and I just like run from one, and I'm like, wait, am I having an episode?
Sometimes I feel like I can get hypomanic too. I think it's normal to feel hypomanic. You have to have at least a depressive episode within bipolar 2 to have it. So you need that, 2 weeks of clinical depression and then that hypomanic episode. But it's really tough to identify hypomania. Like sometimes for mania, it's easier. Like they come in the hospital, you know what's going on. And if they're in the hospital, like for the family, they might freak out. Oh, my patient is in an inpatient hospital. But I more so see it as a good thing. Like, okay, we can watch them. We can watch them sleep for 3 or 4 days because they haven't slept for a week. We can give them medications. We can,
they just cannot rest. They're rest.
Right. So I like, not to say I like when they're in a manic episode, but I like being able to identify it. But hypomania is very difficult to lock down.
Why don't you tell like the listeners who don't know the difference between mania and hypomania real quick, and then we'll wrap it up.
Right. So with mania, you're going to have somebody who you have to have an elevated mood, and this is somebody for like a period of a week or so. They'll have, they might max out credit cards. We have something called indiscretion. You're operating without really having any regard for your body. You'll multiple sexual partners unprotected, grandiose. A lot of times in a manic episode, you can see people have delusions. Like they can say, I'm the president of the U.S. or
I will be.
Right. Or
pressured speech is one of it, right?
Pressured speech. They're talking like a mile a minute.
Right. Just keep talking like one idea to another where like you cannot even get a word in.
Yeah. They're going from topic to topic. These people, a lot of times you'll see that they do things that they're not aware of what they're doing. They're just going so fast.
So quick, yeah.
And a true manic episode, if you can catch it in time, like if it has to last for like a week. Hypomania is 4 days, mania is for 7 days. But if it lands somebody in a psychiatric hospital, I'm still getting familiar with the hospitals out here in the Los Angeles area. But if they 5150 you to a hospital and you're admitted because of a manic episode, then by definition you're bipolar 1. Because if it's bipolar 2, it'd be hypomania, which you can still function, but you're still your mood's elevated and you're still doing some of these things, but it hasn't taken away your day-to-day impairment.
Right.
And of course, you'll have that depressive episode with bipolar 2.
So you have to have a major depressive episode, a company.
With
for it to be
2.
Right. Yeah.
And in bipolar 1, you don't necessarily have to have that depressive episode,
right?
But a lot of times you do see people have that manic depressive back and forth where they're extremely manic and then they're extremely depressed. But you don't have to have a depressive episode within bipolar 1 to be bipolar 1.
Right.
As long as once you have that manic episode, if it lasts for 2-3 days and you're in an inpatient hospital, we go ahead and we treat you for bipolar 1 because it's more so of like a safety thing. We want to go ahead and put you on mood stabilizers, let you get some rest, let you sleep off, whatever, mania you have, because we would rather you come in the hospital than to keep going and then, you crash your car because you're driving 120 miles on 405 or something like that.
Right. A lot of times they just like set their mind on like accomplishing a goal in like a very short amount of time, right? Like I'm going to like paint my whole house by like the morning, right, and like they can't stop talking about it, and like they feel like they absolutely can do it, and just like it's
and they have that belief that I can accomplish this task. Like I can write. I had a patient tell me that he was going to read the DSM-5 in 5 minutes and interpret everything. Like they feel like they can actually do that.
Yeah.
You know?
I got to read that book at some time.
The DSM-5?
Yeah.
It's best to go with the pocket guide. The actual one is pretty thick.
Chunky.
Yeah, I have like 2 little pocket guides.
It's come a long way too.
Yeah, the DSM has come a long way. At one point, you know, being gay, you know,
was a mental issue.
Yeah, and
because some like rich white dude like hundreds of years ago sat down and wrote DSM, right? The first DSM, and like anything that was like separate from him and his group of people, he was like, "Oh, you're crazy."
Right. And minorities don't seek care traditionally, so as we have more people of color seek care, you know, it'll be interesting to see like other, you know, mental health practitioners like me, how we can adjust. You know, I'm not sure when the DSM-6 comes out, but it'd be nice for it to be more culturally competent.
Yeah.
You know, because like if I walk in and if a white guy walks into a psych hospital and we're both like aggressive and violent, like we spoke about earlier in the podcast, I'm more likely to be diagnosed with schizophrenia and they'll give him bipolar.
Yeah.
Because of the color of my skin. So we have a long way to go. And as we talk about these things, you know, like we can influence the next generation. Like every single thing that we talk about is influencing the next generation.
Since you brought that up, I have to ask this, and this will be the last thing because I know we're out of time.
For sure.
Do you feel like people's behavior changes when you're in your scrubs around you than when you're in your normal clothes? I'm curious.
Like for me personally?
Yeah.
I think so because... yeah, most definitely. Because I mean, if people see me in public, I'm 6'3", like 215. So, like, they might think that I play a sport or something like that. But if I'm in my scrubs, or people know what I do, you know, as a mental health clinician, you know, they'll ask questions like, oh, like, or like if the number one question I get, like, if I'm talking to a girl, like, she'll say, oh, don't psychoanalyze me. So if people know what you do, like, they'll, you know, they might.
People like tell me that all the time too, which is like,
right, knowing that you do psychology, yeah, they're gonna like, oh, don't diagnose me or anything like that, but
don't diagnose.
Definitely, like when you walk in, you know, in scrubs or if you have like a white coat on, like if you appear to be a clinician, people's behavior, I think will change based off if I'm wearing basketball shorts and I'm just
right,
like,
and just like a hoodie.
You're right, yeah. I think people, you know, but it's good to, you know, to switch it up sometimes because I want people to be comfortable with me. Like I want to hear what people actually want to say, not what they think they have to say.
Yeah.
You know, so I like getting people's like authentic perspective on things. And like more so when I'm talking to somebody, like I'm here, like on this podcast, I'm here to learn. Like I'm here to learn from you. I'm here to learn from the audience of, you know, the comments of what people say. Like I want to learn, you know, because you can read the books up and down all day, but like you have to like practice and learn and see what people are saying so you can see how things are characterized as.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Dr. Kojo.
I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for coming on. This was so much fun.
It was. Likewise. I appreciate you having me on. It was definitely a blast to do this.
We had some wine. You good to drive back home?
Oh, yeah. I'm good to drive.
All right.
Let's gotta pee first.
Same. Bye, guys.
All right. Take care. Yeah.
This was great.
That was dope.
That was so dope. I could have talked to you for another like 2 hours.
Move with the rhythm. Shake it up, stop when the clock hits 13. You've been working, but you're flirting with the weekend. You can freak out.